Video games usually take a long time to make. That is why I'm going to challenge myself to make a horror game with a time limit of a total of 24 hours, because I like to suffer. There is one exception. I am only going to count the time I actually spent making the game. So I am not going to count the time when I am, for example, sleeping. With that being said, here is the idea. You play as a mechanic at an abandoned cable car station in the middle of the forest, and you need to fix some generators to travel to the next station. However, that is when you realize that you are not alone, and there is some sort of creature hiding in the woods.
Yeah, boy.
I started by making a new Unity project, waiting for it to load. And I used this player controller that I made for one of my other games, which also has an interaction system. I modified the code so that instead of picking up and dropping items, you have 3 items in your inventory, which you can navigate through with the numbers on your keyboard. But this happens instantly and looks very static, so I made it so that it moves up or down when switching items. Also, I added a tiny delay when swapping items, which gets visualized with this circle. After finishing the inventory system, I started making UI elements for it in Affinity Photo, which for now are just white squares, but I will replace them later on with the actual items. To top it off, I gave the UI some animations to show which item you are currently holding. Now that most of the player controller is done, I decided it was time to start working on the enemy creature, since this is probably going to take a lot of time. I started by drawing some sketches. Please don't judge my drawing skills. I want the creature to look like some sort of skeleton that lives in the woods. I started by modeling the skull and jaw. Then I made the spine, which together looks, well, interesting. I finished the skeleton by making the ribcage, hip, arms and legs. To make the skeleton look like it comes out of a forest, I added some branches on his back. And as you might have noticed, he has no teeth, no feet and no hands. Because I already spent quite a lot of time making this model and it's not even done yet. Now it is nice that we have the model, but right now he can't move at all. So I need to make a rig, and luckily nothing ever goes wrong while rigging a model. Oh come on man. After spending way more time rigging it than I would like to admit, I made some textures for it. Now I am happy how it turned out, but currently the game just feels empty. So I started making the environment in Blender. For a cable car station you need a mountain, so I made one. For the actual station I started with the base ground and stairs. I also made this fence model and placed it around the scene. After that I made this roof model with some extra details. And of course you can't have a cable car without some rails. I finished the station by making extra details such as a ticket booth, and we can't forget the generator you eventually need to fix. Now that the station is ready, I imported it to Substance Painter to make it look like rusty or abandoned. Now I mentioned earlier that this would be a game about a cable car, but unless you want to walk up a haunted hill, I don't see a cable car. So I ended up making this cable car model and giving it some textures to make it look old and rusty. Now it wouldn't be a cable car without, you know, a cable. So I made a cable and these towers that hold the cable. After I finished making all of the assets, I imported it to Unity, but I have never seen a forest without trees. So I imported these trees from my other game and also these fences. I will place the rest of the trees later, but I need to change the atmosphere first, so that it starts to look more like a horror game. Which made me almost crash out and lose my mind because the lighting looked really off and weird, especially the fog. So I spent an hour changing nearly every setting in Unity trying to fix this issue. And finally, after an hour and a few brain cells lost, I got the lighting and graphics to work properly. And I also added some slight post-processing. To top it off, I also added volumetric lighting, which you can see in the station and through the trees. But I need to change the materials a bit because right now the concrete looks very slippery. And it still blows my mind how much textures and lighting can really transform a scene. Now that most of the visuals are done, it is time to program the actual gameplay, because everything you have seen so far took me nearly 10 hours to make. I hopped in Affinity Photo and made some assets for a minigame where you need to stop the needle in a green area. Back in Unity I made it so that you can only interact with the generator if you are holding the wrench. Then the minigame will appear, and if you complete it, the main gate will open. Now, it is nice that you can open the gate by fixing the generator, however, you are still stuck on this station. So I programmed it so that once you fix the generator, you can use your key to drive the cable car. Then the door will close and the cable car starts driving. Also, I made this door which has a delay when opening it, which will make more sense later on. Now, it is cool that you can drive the cable car, however, right now you just drive towards, well, nothing. So I duplicated the first station and placed it further up the hill. And now it stops at the second station. It stops at the second station and the door opens. Now this looks great, however, this is not really exciting gameplay. That is where the creature comes in, and let's just call him Juan. But first, I am tired looking at these placeholder items.
What's that?
So I started making this wrench model and gave it a steel texture. Then I made this key model and also gave it a texture. And finally I made this shotgun model, and this is the best I can do with the time I have. And I am also not a gun expert, so shoot me if I'm wrong. I take that back. Now back to Juan, I gave it an animation to appear in front of the cable car. Okay, that's a bit too much. And when you shoot, nothing happens. So I programmed a shoot mechanic and made an animation for when a creature gets shot. But if you don't shoot in time, Juan will catch you. Now it is nice that we can actually encounter the creature, however, the second station still feels a bit empty. So to fix that, I made a second event to make the gameplay more immersive. Now you may remember these items that I made before, however the UI still shows a white square. So I fixed that by making icons for the items, which looks way better. Now that we have 2 stations ready, it is time for the third and final station. And for this station, I want to do things a little bit different. Instead of just waiting to arrive at the third station, you need to reset the cable car with your key every once in a while. Otherwise, the cable car will stop moving and you will get caught.
Hi, how are you?
On top of that, I also wanted to do something with the creature. I made 5 different animations to let the creature randomly appear in one of the 5 windows. Then you quickly need to shoot the creature with your shotgun. And this goes on until you reach the third station or until you get caught. And this is where the item delay and middle door comes in. Because you have to strategically open the door and switch to the correct item in time. Now earlier I talked about reaching the third station. However, the third station does not exist yet. So I did the same thing as before and duplicated the previous station. Okay, never mind then. To top it off, I added the remaining trees and also some extra cable towers to make it feel like an actual forest rather than an empty area. And finally, I made an end animation when you reach the final station, where you discover that you are actually one of the creatures as well. Okay, I know it may not be the best story or ending, but come on, I was running out of time. Speaking of time, after I made the end animation, I had officially spent a total time of 24 hours making the game. But I spent an extra 1 or 2 hours polishing the game, because most objects don't have colliders, there are no sound effects, and the game doesn't even have a main menu. So technically I failed the challenge, but the main gameplay was made within the challenge. I just wanted to add extra polish to make the game complete. So I gave everything a collider, I made a main menu, and the biggest game changer, the sound effects. And some sound effects have this 3D effect, so it sounds different depending on how far away you are and which direction you are facing. The last thing I added is this typewriter text, or whatever you call this effect, to give some explanation during the game. So I am playing, well, Game of the Year obviously. You just need to fix this generator. Use key. Okay, there's Juan. Get out! By the way, if you want to play this game for yourself, there's a link in the description and you can play it for free. Oh yeah, that's the thing. Damn, oh shit. Why do I always forget the stuff that I add in my games? I always forget it. And now comes the most hectic part of the game. Okay, and that's the end basically. So yeah, that's the end. Crazy lore. Anyways, thanks for watching until the end and until the next one.